I am here with Erica Peitler, who is the leadership performance coach who designs and facilitates customized experiential learning leadership development journeys. Driven by the belief that there's nothing we can't talk about, Erica creates safe space environments where personal barriers are overcome, relationship baggage is unpacked, and team organizational breakthroughs can occur on an accelerated basis. She is dedicated to creating change-ready leaders who are capable of leading themselves, leading teams, and leading at the organizational level. Her most recent book, Leadership Rigor, is an international bestseller and a roadmap for creating her customized journeys. It's so nice to have you here, Erica.
Thanks, Diane. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, I had fun watching some of your videos. You get really into some really interesting things, and I like the whole safe space environment discussion. So for people that are listening, I get a lot of CEOs that listen to this show, and I'm sure that's one of your major audiences. What is a safe space environment, and how do you get that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I work a lot with CEOs and senior level executives, and they bring, as you know, to their role and to every room that they enter and every table that they sit at, they bring position power. They're the boss, right? They're the big kahuna. And what they tend to do is intimidate or potentially create anxiety just because of their seniority in their organization. So this concept of safe space is, how do we help leaders understand that for people to do their best work, to take risks, to make changes, and to really help drive our business, they need to feel comfortable, they need to feel safe, they need to feel respected, and that leaders today need to go out of their way to neutralize their position power and make sure that they nurture this safe space and create personal power at an equality level for everyone in the room so that they really get the ideas and the talent to give them their best.
Well, you know, I know a lot of people that don't realize they come across as intimidating. You know what I mean? And it's just, a lot of it has to do with just their position. They don't really intend to do that. But, you know, a lot of people, I've worked for people in the past where they said they wanted input from people, but then you kind of saw those people disappear if they gave input. So how do you get people that, you know, came from that culture, and maybe you're not that kind of leader, but you're leading people who've been around those type of leaders? How do you get people past that?
Yeah, so I've grown up in large corporations, so I have had my fair share of leaders that have been reared in a little bit of that old school mentality, that command and control.
Right.
And, you know, what I try to help people realize is, you know, when you come from command and control, you really drive a compliance culture. And when you're driving a compliance culture, you're creating that emperor is wearing, you know, no clothes scenario, because you didn't create that safe space. No one's really talking to you. So, you know, one of the things that the leader needs to understand is, look, you know, you're always going to have the ability to make the decision and make the call. So relax, you know, get people to open up, get people to give you the advice and the counsel. You get to ultimately make the decision. Don't feel intimidated by that. On the other side of the table, my coaching to the folks who may not be at that very senior level or may be a direct report of that senior individual is, hey, listen, you know, you're paid at the table to give your point of view and your perspective. So, you know, use your veritas, speak truth to power. You'll be respected for it, and your gravitas to influence the conversation. You know, if you're afraid of losing your job, then you're in the wrong job, right? You know, and the leaders of today really need to realize that there are so many great ideas and possibilities out there. Our job is to listen, hear it, and hey, we get to ultimately make the decision, but at least let's get our talent to give us the options.
Well, you know, you bring up a good point, because I was thinking, you know, you say you're in the wrong place, but, you know, I've seen a lot of people who work for companies where the culture really is not the greatest, but they kind of feel like they either have the golden handcuffs, or there just isn't a lot of opportunity for, maybe they're very specialized in what they do. And I've seen, like, the CEOs really not realize that there's a serious culture problem. And if the CEOs are not looking for help, how do you get, I mean, it has to come from above. How do we fix this? I mean, what do we tell these CEOs, right?
You know, it's a great question. And typically, you know, as a leadership coach, you know, if you work with CEOs like I do, that CEO is either halfway enlightened or pretty well enlightened if they want to work with a coach to begin with, because they don't have to. right? The days of, charm school and working for real corrective actions are really gone, because those CEOs don't really survive as much today. So this concept of, how do we help these CEOs? CEOs, I think, are starting to get more and more exposure to the fact that the job really is not awesome and wonderful if you don't have great people around you. It's just too stressful.
Right.
So, people are not pursuing those roles anymore in the same way that I think they were in the past. And I work with a lot of small to mid-sized space, so a lot of folks in these companies are family members, they're family owners, or they've inherited their company. And, when you really get to know them, they're very lonely and they're very isolated. So, coaching and peer groups is one way that you start to break down some of their fear and some of their anxieties. And once they start to realize that, hey, listen, everybody has problems, everybody has issues, and culture is a challenge for every company. You have your unique culture that you can possibly pave the way for. You kind of inspire that competitive spirit in them, and you start to show them how leadership and the cultural development of their organization really taps into all the things that they want to be, which is the best. They want to be strong. They want to be proud of who they are and who their companies are. So I try to invite them into the conversation by saying, listen, you built a great business and you have a great business model. Do you have the competitive advantage with your people and the culture that's going to match that? Because if not, you're leaving an awful lot on the table.
You talk about leaving things on the table. It's interesting because, you think of people who have been successful leaders in terms of how the companies succeeded, maybe not how people viewed them, maybe like Steve Jobs. I mean, how do you, would he do as well in younger generations now than as he did in the past? Do you think that they're starting to tolerate less of that type of personality, or I'm just curious what you think of his style of leadership.
So, I think that the environment, has clearly changed, and even he didn't survive his own environment, right? So, he owned his company, he kind of got thrown out of this company, he was brought back to his company. So, you could look at Uber today, right?
Yeah.
Travis Kalanick and the different changes that are happening. I think the environment that we're working in today is a lot more egalitarian. People want respect. People want equality across the board in a variety of ways. So if a leader is not able to provide that, they're probably not going to have that top job. So do I think Steve Jobs would be able to succeed in the CEO role? No, but in a wonderful, role that was focused on, the technology or the innovation, yes. And I think we have to start increasingly differentiate in the business world today. Those who want to be enterprise leaders and those who are entrepreneurial leaders, right? Those people who want to cut the deal, who want to, build the technology, who want to drive the technical specialty. That's that entrepreneurial leader. That enterprise leader says, I can make the system work. I can make the environment thrive by really tapping into people, process, structure, and enabling it to really reach its full potential. Two very different jobs. We've often confused them. I think we're becoming more and more aware of separating them, and there are very different qualities and characteristics that each side of that has. The challenge is, if you are the CEO, you need to flank with an entrepreneurial leader, and if you're that entrepreneurial CEO, you really need to flank with an enterprise leader at an operating level.
Well, I've worked for leaders who really were great at certain parts of their jobs. Maybe they really probably were more managerial than they were leader quality. I mean, they were tactical type of positions. And can you take somebody that's tactical that maybe isn't really great with people and make them into a good leader?
Well, here you could, here's the big if.
Okay.
if they are willing to grow and learn. So, what I did in Leadership Rigor, for example, right? I feel like there's been a black box mystery around leadership development. It's a little bit of luck, it's a little bit of chance. And what I've tried to do is lay it out and say, listen, there are certain things you need to be able to do to lead yourself, and there are certain things that you need to be able to do to lead a team. And if you ever want to play at the organizational level, well, the rules and the requirements get even more challenging at that level, but let's lay them out and see what they are. The concept of tactics versus strategy versus, do you play too much in the weeds? Are you big picture enough? those are skills, I believe, that everyone can learn. Leadership is a skill set that can be learned. There's no magic to it. You can flex. It might be harder for you in certain areas than others, but it's something you can definitely acquire the skills of, and you can advance from being tactical to understanding. What are the questions that would allow you to have a strategic approach to problem solving and to be taught how to do that? Natural aptitude is always wonderful, but I really do believe that most of these things can be taught if the person is willing to invest in the time and the effort.
Yeah, I've seen the opposite true as well. People are so strategic that they plan the plan, and they have these great ideas and then never implement anything. How does that guy fix it, or that gal?
Well, and this, I find that a lot of this comes down to learning about yourself, because, usually we're Mr. or Miss Magoo, that cartoon character where walking through the world, not really sure what's happening. A lot of the work that I do with the leadership journeys that I create is I really start to help each of the individual members of the team understand who they are. So, whether it's their hardwiring, their MBTI preferences. Some people are naturally detail-oriented and some people are big-picture-oriented. That's fine. That's a starting place. That's your hardwiring. But knowing where you are and where the other people are in the room around you and what does it look like, sound like, and feel like to flex. One of the things that we have to teach leaders today in the business world is the golden rule is no longer in effect, right? That golden rule we grew up with, which is treat others the way you want to be treated.
Right.
That's old school. In
Right.
today's contemporary environment, it's the platinum rule. Treat others the way they want to be treated.
Right.
So we have to be much more in tune to not just what our hardwiring is, but where is Diane's hardwiring, and how do I connect as Erica to Diane so that I can really inspire Diane to do her best in this environment. And that's on me. If I'm your leader, it's on me to flex to your style more so than for you to understand Erica and flex to mine.
Well, I mean, you're talking about so much of what I've studied and written about, and I really I couldn't agree more with that. And I think that it's interesting to give personality types. You mentioned the MBTI. I'm curious what your type is. Do you know what it is?
Of course. You want to guess, or should I just reveal that to you?
Just reveal it. I'm thinking it's pretty close to mine, though, but go ahead.
So I am an ENTP.
Oh.
Which is interesting, right? So I'm extroverted, intuitive, a thinker, and a perceiver. And what's super interesting is if I ask my clients what they think my profile is when they come into a room and experience me, a lot of them will say that I'm a feeler versus a thinker. So I've learned very much to flex to compassion and empathy, which I don't think I was hardwired with as much natural tendency for.
Right.
And this profile is so interesting because what I heard the nickname of was for ENTP is life's entrepreneur, and I was that enterprise leader. So to be labeled life's entrepreneur, I was like, no way. But I've really grown into understanding now and dedicating myself to appreciating that entrepreneurial enterprise balance.
You care to guess mine?
Oh, I don't know you well enough to guess, so hit me.
ESTJ.
All right, so ESTJ, love that. In fact, it's interesting because so many of the business leaders that I work with have that profile. And as you know, you're on one of the four corners, right? You're in that lower left-hand quadrant.
Always extreme, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's you like to get stuff done.
Right.
This is a get stuff done quadrant.
Yeah, it's really interesting. In my last company, we took the disc. Everybody took, and of course, I was in the D. We went to our top type on that one, and everybody went in their corners. You know how you do the experiment. And it was interesting to me to see that most of the leaders really were in the D quadrant that were really successful. And there's certain qualities that just really put people into certain areas. Now, if you're an S or some other type, if you're not the ESTJ or the typical type, what do you tell people to help them balance the things that maybe would make them be a better leader?
So I'm going to answer that question two ways. First, you bring up DISC, which I think DISC is an interesting tool. It's a tool I use less because it's really environmentally specific. But what I do like about DISC is so D-I, S, and C. So driver, inspiring, steady, and conscientious. So you separated D and I. The philosophy of a driver and inspirer is, I believe, that I can achieve what I need to do in the environment, that I'm stronger than the environment. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's why you get a lot of people who are in those leadership roles, because they believe they can shape that environment. They believe they can change that environment. Mm-hmm. And the steady and conscientious believe that the environment is really much more stable and they need to conform within it. So they're a little bit more passive to the environment, which is kind of interesting because, you know, whether it's Myers-Briggs or whether it's DISC, mm-hmm. it's the orientation that you have. The question is, what are you willing to flex to? And what are mm-hmm. you willing to, you know, in terms of being a change-ready leader, which you talked about at the top of the show, I say that in change-ready leadership, you have to be willing to take risks and make changes. Mm-hmm. You have to be willing to facilitate progress and facilitate aligned action, which means you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. And we are most uncomfortable when we are out of the comfort zone of our personality. So you're an ESTJ. Mm-hmm. If I were to surround you with a group of feelers who are subjective right. about the way that they come at the world, and, you know, they want to talk about their feelings and how they want to, you know, make certain decisions, you know, you might go, oh my God, I got to get out of here, right? But, you know, if you say, wow, you know, let me hear and understand where they're coming from and how can this help me inform my decision making so that I can be, you know, more clear about how this decision is going to impact them because they have some real strong feelings for it. Now you're enormously armed mm-hmm. with a great way to influence and persuade. So the That's differences and how I try to coach people, mm-hmm. be so curious about the other side because it makes you be yourself a more effective leader.
Well, you know, it's so fascinating because when I got MBT certified when I was writing my doctoral dissertation on emotional intelligence, and because I thought it would be kind of interesting to tie in other personality type of things, right? And when they did the T and the F dichotomy, they had you go one side of the room, you know, same kind of thing like they did with DISC. And they start all the Fs they would ask, you know, do you like it when people do you like to bring people cookies? And do you like it when people give you cookies? And I'm thinking, cookies? Why would you want? Because I was such a T, you know. And it really helped me to see, they like it when you bring them cookies. Okay, so I started to open up, and like you said, you have to find what it is that the other side of the dichotomy wants. I actually had a 0 on F, by the way, 0. I didn't have any, and it took me.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd never seen that when I gave the assessment to people. I mean, I apparently don't make any of my decisions based on my values, which is kind of interesting. But it is a really important thing to look at different personality types, and I totally agree with you. It is, you have to think what they would want, because if you think what you'd want, I don't want cookies, you know, but they want cookies, some people, or whatever it is that they want, you know. And
well, you know, and what you say, Diane, though, that really triggers for me mm-hmm. something, you know, really interesting is, you know, when you said you were doing your studies on emotional intelligence. Mm-hmm. So, you know, one of the things that, you know, is a battle, I think, for leaders today, mm-hmm. and I can admit it was a battle for myself. Mm-hmm. You know, I was a smarty pants, like, you know, super high IQ, able to, you know, leap tall business challenges in a mm-hmm. single bound, but had probably, you know, way lower emotional intelligence than the titles and the levels and the roles that I was given. So I really needed to catch up on that. But, you know, once you realize that emotional intelligence is about the relationships that you have, and as a leadership coach, I say, listen, leadership runs on two currencies. There's only two things we get to do: communicate, and we've talked a lot about whether it's your style or your personality, communicate and be understood and understand each other. And then the relationships we form. Are we pissing people off, or are we bringing them into our corners? You know, at the end of the day, your emotional intelligence, as you know, is something that you can learn, just like leadership can be learned. And it is the quintessential skill set. And, you know, whether you are an F or a T, and I'm pretty high on that T side, I got to tell you, mm-hmm. I work really hard to tap into my F, mm-hmm. but to do it, you know, authentically and to do it in a way that lands with people, you know, I think I've learned to literally enjoy it and be a part of it. In fact, I tell people, you're messing me up, man. You're making me F. And I'm like, you know, I have so many clients that are Fs, and I'm like, oh my God, I think I'm turning you into a T monster and I'm becoming an F monster.
Well, it's all very fascinating to read about this stuff, and I think it's really hard to put people into little clean, easy boxes just by giving personality tests. But I think it does give you some insight, and I think it's the same thing with generations. That you want to look at their generations. Just to see what experiences that they've had, what they grew up with. Some of that stuff is the same for each group. But I'm sure the leaders listening probably have some challenges having so many generations in the workplace. What advice do you give them as far as getting everybody to get along based on that?
Yeah, so this is one of the most contemporary issues today, and I think in general, the biggest piece of advice I try to give everybody is, take a step back and try to not be so judgmental or impulsive in trying to see everyone through the same lens. Mm-hmm. Everyone is unique and everyone has their own perspective. So, whether they're in that millennial generation or otherwise, we need to be flexible. I see, it's interesting because, we'll talk about old school. And, I was having a conversation with one of my clients. There are a lot of young kids that are old school in their thinking, and there are a lot of mm-hmm. very senior level executives today that are, in the twilight of their career that are as, young and innovative as you would think 20 and 30-year-olds should be. So I think the generational attitudes and behaviors might be slightly different, but the people in them kind of cross over the barriers. So I say don't be duped mm-hmm. by the age of the individual. Look at the energy and the philosophy and the way that the individual is coming towards their challenges and their opportunities. And I think in that case, what that says is, well, then there's a desire and a goal for leaders to be aware of and flexible of all the different 4 generations that could be in your workplace right now, how they differ, what motivates them, and how do you therefore create an inspiring workplace that allows that to all happen all at once. That's a heavy burden for a leader to play, but you got to do your homework and you need to know what's motivating and inspiring to these guys and learn how to be flexible and accommodating to those differences.
Well, all the advice that I'm hearing from you is all going to help with engagement. I mean, that's what everybody's talking about, is how bad the engagement is out there. And if listening and communicating and all the things you're talking about are so huge. I mean, what are your most requested topics? Or is it always culture? I'm curious.
So, okay. So it doesn't come to me directly like, hey, we need to change the culture. Mm-hmm. But it usually all comes down to, what is the environment and the atmosphere that the leader is setting up? And what they often don't realize is they're setting up the way we do things around here, and that is the culture, right? So, mm-hmm. First of all, who are they in the environment, and how does that all come to pass? It builds on what you had said earlier, which is, yeah, I've met those leaders that say they want feedback, but then they really don't want that feedback. Right. So, mm-hmm. What is it like to be with the leaders in a room? And, I use in my coaching practice a lot of the Patrick Lencioni 5 Dysfunctions of a Teamwork, mm-hmm. because building trust, teaching a team how to have productive conflict, those are the 2 steps, those first 2 dysfunctions that most teams never get over. They become functionally dysfunctional. They are successful. They don't reach their potential because they really don't like each other, trust each other, and they don't know how to have good arguments. So they have that passive-aggressive meeting after the meeting backstabbing. Mm-hmm. What I tend to do is, using a line that you said at the top of the show, my philosophy is I'm going to bring you into a room and there's nothing we can't talk about. And yes, I'm going to go there. Wherever there is, whatever you're most afraid of talking about in this room, yeah, that's the place I want to go to first. Because the faster I can uncover that for you and say that out loud and have us deal with that, the faster you're going to see that there's really no big deal to having these conversations, that we're adults in the room, that we can handle it, and that these are the conversations that really cause the breakthroughs for you to be able to say, hey, I got some really great people around the table here. How do we get your talent, your ideas working for us, as opposed to me jockeying for position and you jockeying for position? So the most sought after thing is healthy team dynamics.
Yeah, and that's such a huge thing because everything's so team related, much more so than when I entered the workplace many decades ago. And it's so challenging that we've got more diversity than ever. But the more diverse teams create, the more interesting outcomes, but also the most challenges with personality conflict, as you know. So I think there's so much that can be learn from what you do, and I'm sure a lot of people want to find out how they can reach you and learn some more. Can you just share how they can get more information from you?
Sure, a couple different ways. Well, first is Leadership Rigor, which is a book on leading yourself, leading teams, and leading at the organizational level. You can pick that up on Amazon in either hard copy or Kindle. My website, EricaPeitler.com, I should say, is my website, and that's Peitler. If you want to email me, it's Erica@EricaPeitler. And I'm also on LinkedIn and Twitter, and my Twitter handle is @EricaPeitler. So if you're interested in getting a hold of me, Google me. There's all sorts of ways to make a contact and a connection.
Well, it's been really fascinating. You and I have a lot in common. We can spend all day talking about this, and I loved all this. So thank you so much, Erica. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Diane. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, and we'll be back right after this.